Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another edition of CivicCast, the podcast for engaged citizens. We're your hosts, Jeremiah Kimmelman and Jason Denizak. And today we have the fortunate pleasure to talk with both Alan Williams and Samuel Hulick this week about a project called Citizen Onboard. Welcome, both of you.
It is wonderful to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Fantastic. And so just by way of background, Samuel, I know you run useronboard.com and have been engaged a little bit before working with analyzing that user experience. Alan is a former Code for America fellow now working in a lot of projects in healthcare. Maybe you could give us a little bit of a background of the origin story. How did you two meet?
Sure. So I was running useronboard.com. It was not out for too long before I got an email from someone named Jake Solomon, also of Code for America. The site that I run, useronboard, is a slideshow teardown review of how popular web applications get users from sign up to a successful state within their product. So Jake reached out and shared something he'd been working on, which was following the same kind of format the slideshow format that I'd been using, but applying it to civic services or government websites. Really very quickly opened my eyes to the importance of the project, and I've been signed on ever since.
Very interesting. And Alan, how did you come to kind of work in this health space? Particularly, I'm really intrigued by this collaboration between philosophies and practices that are relatively common in modern web applications and trying to apply them to a lot of these kind of, well, basically what comprise the social safety net.
Right. Yeah. Jake and I saw Sam's work at about the same time earlier this year, January, February this year, and we were just really impressed with how clearly he was able to critique really well put together websites and point out how the user might actually feel encountering those different prompts and calls to action, how they might tackle different forms and different tasks, what the workflow was like for actually getting through services. And we immediately saw that this had a tremendous value that could be applied to government services, particularly those in the safety net where people really need to be able to enroll in these services in order to live healthy and productive lives. Some statistics also sort of pushed us in that direction as well. Here in California, just over 50% of the eligible population is actually enrolled in the SNAP program, in the food stamps program, and so when we're looking for reasons why that number is so low, certainly the online application experience was a first place to start.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If they can't sign up, they can't enroll in the process. When we're looking at what these kind of analysis of government services look like, can you give us a little bit of flavor of your critique, or what is the scope of the problem? What is currently the situation, and what is your analysis of it?
And also maybe a little bit making it concrete. What do these look like? What types of experiences are people having when they're signing up for food stamps, when they're trying to access some of the benefits that might be able to help them lead richer lives?
Sam, maybe give your impression. I can fill in with a little color.
Sure. So typically the experiences seem to be a bit on the extended side. That certainly length is a standout characteristic. The forms, I would say, are not necessarily a joy to use or things along those lines. So coming from a perspective of a user experience consultant, there is certainly a lot of personality or opportunity for warmth that's left on the table. Ultimately, however, it's a functional transaction that's taking place, and so just analyzing the screens for what they're able to get people to do, and then obviously how pleasant it is to get there, to do it.
Right. So when I did a critique of Covered California, and they're the health insurance exchange here in California for doing public option healthcare. And it is emblematic of a lot of these services in that the user experience certainly isn't consumer grade, but there's also some functionality issues oftentimes. it may look like everything's going to work out just fine, but sometimes you get to the last screen like I did, and the application crashes. And so a lot of people are going through these applications, spending a lot of time going through very lengthy applications and then encountering a critical error. And so that is something that we've seen again and again. And currently about 10% of the Snap application websites in all 50 states are down right now. And so there's also that sort of just most basic elevating of the issue that we're doing here by saying, like, what is the performance of these services? Are they available consistently? And if they're long, go ahead, Sam.
Oh, and just to jump in, another functional consideration from just a usability standpoint is just considering what sort of devices people are using to access these websites to begin with. That if you're applying for food stamps, it's probably coming from something of a disenfranchised situation. Maybe you're on a smartphone, or maybe you're on on a library computer or something along those lines. So certainly not. One can't assume that there's top of the line equipment being used either. So especially when you're talking about a website crashing or something along those lines, that it can be a real tightrope walk in that regard.
His point about mobile phones in particular, I think, is very salient. People that are least likely to have a solid internet connection are the people that are applying for these services in a lot of cases. Sure.
Yeah, and anecdotally speaking, my wife used to be a case manager at a homeless women's shelter, and one thing that really stood out to her is how much of all the possessions that someone might lose, the phone was one of the last to go. That in a lot of ways it's really a lifeline. And so if that's really your portal to the world, and you're trying to operate a 120 screen workflow on a website that was designed to be used with IE7 or something, there's certainly a lot of room for error there.
So let's talk about this this process of how it was designed and how it came to be this way. Alan, we were speaking earlier, and you mentioned that in many cases the design, these forms are filled out by people who might be caseworkers or social workers who are expert users of these forms, and they'll bypass a lot of the fields, and they'll just recognize that it's information that doesn't really need to be collected. And especially if these forms are on paper, I think maybe there was a different kind of design standard in the day for having all of the fields that you could possibly ever need. And then as these are transitioned onto digital services, each of those form fields just kind of comes over without any kind of critical review at that stage into the process that results in really unusable citizen services. Can you maybe talk more about that, and how do we get to the next level in terms of designing things that work for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different things. I mean, one level, like you said, is that it can be confusing and it can be jarring. Sometimes there's questions about, whether or not you committed a felony before a certain year in the mid-90s. Check yes or no. And if you check yes, then you're ineligible for benefits. Other times it's just the phrasing of questions, not sort of respecting that you don't know the inside baseball for a given program. And then other times it's really just like the length and complexity of the application. And what you referred to earlier is actually some research that we were doing. We've gotten to know the folks at the food bank of San Francisco and Marin pretty well, and watching them help people enroll in SNAP and Medi-Cal was sort of revelatory. And these folks are experts in the online software. In this case, My Benefits CalWin, and they knew that they could just submit the application on behalf of their of the citizen after, say, 15% was completed. They would just go ahead and submit and leave all of that, maybe 100 pages uncompleted. And what they knew that we learned by watching them was that there was a minimum set of information that would trigger an eligibility worker giving the citizen a phone call. And on the phone call, they could actually sort out all of that other information that the rest of the application was asking them. And in fact, we learned even later that even if you do fill out all that information, you're likely going to go back over it with the eligibility worker. And so there was really not much being gained, if at all.
So there's another project that you worked on with that insight called Cal Fresh and So Clean. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, these teardowns that Sam does for all sorts of folks and that we did for HSA, they start a conversation with the people responsible for the software. And you go through the process. You take notes about how you're feeling and the way you experience the tool, the workflow. And when you show it back to people who are responsible for that, who have some ability to do something about it, they get really interested. They want to. You're showing them how they can improve the service they offer. And so, sure enough, when Jake did a teardown for My Benefits CalWin, he showed it to the folks at the San Francisco Human Services Agency, and they immediately started talking about how they could improve it, how they could improve this process. And so My Benefits CalWin is a big state operation, but we said, well, maybe we can build something lighter and quicker and cheaper, and just prototypes what an alternative would look like. And so we built an application called Cal Fresh and So Clean, and it's a very simple, responsive web form, multi-page web form that asks the bare minimum of personal information, tries to ask it in a respectful way, tries to live up to usability best practices, is designed for use on mobile phone and in tablets and things like that. And when people submit an application on CalFresh and So Clean, we just take that data, write it to a PDF version of the paper form, and fax it into HSA. And so we were able to start getting people actually submitting real applications to HSA in just a couple of weeks. And as a result, have started a larger conversation with HSA about how we can improve the business process side of the house.
Now, I really love this model, this pattern that I see for some civic applications that it sounds like you followed here. You took a complex citizen interaction, analyzed what aspects of it were really necessary, and then created a cleaner interface that was going to be more accessible and more broadly available to people to be able to get the majority of the benefits still. In this case, it results in sending a fax of the physical paper application, and then kicks it into the same process of verifying the eligibility. I think that's great, and I also think that that's something that can maybe be taken and applied to other government processes. We have a couple more minutes on this show. Do you maybe talk about what's coming next with Citizen Onboard, or anything else that you'd like to close with?
Sure. Yeah. So Citizen Onboard is scheduled to launch sometime between now and tomorrow morning, and it's a project that I'm really excited about and really have found really fulfilling to contribute to. We're certainly looking to anybody who has a similar experience that I did of just really finding your eyes open to the enormity of this problem. Would like to contribute. We're looking to make it as easy as possible to do so. So whether you have a technical background or a user experience design background or not, we're certainly welcoming everybody to come in and contribute as much as they possibly can and care to. So the more is certainly the merrier.
Absolutely. And more practically, what does that mean? It means go to citizenonboard.com and take a look at the teardowns for My Benefits CalWin in California, or that Sam's done in Oregon, or the Covered CA teardown that I did, and see what you can do, see the pattern that you can replicate for a service in your community, in the jurisdictions that you're a voting citizen of. And we have open arms to any service that is important to you or to your community. There's just endless services out there that government offers and that are really critical to people's lives. But we also want to recommend and encourage people to actually do the SNAP program enrollment in every state. We have all 50 states on a GitHub repo, github.com/codeforamerica/citizen-onboard. you can find an issue where every single state SNAP enrollment software is online, if they have software. And we hope to check all 50 of those boxes. That's sort of a census of all SNAP enrollment software here at the end of 2014.
That's really great. And you want to throw out the URL one more time for that?
Yeah, first and foremost, go to citizenonboard.com.
Great, and we'll have that in the show notes as well. This has been Alan Williams joining us in our makeshift studio, and we have Samuel Hulick joining us on this show as well. Thank you so much for your participation and for your excellent civic work. This has been another episode of CivicCast, the podcast for engaged citizens. I'm your host, Jason Denizak, and this is Jeremiah Kimmelman. We each strive to bring you conversations with the most creative minds at the forefront of the urban experience in the 21st century. Each show, we try to bring you fresh ideas in civic technology, creative intervention, and empathetic urbanism in 20 minutes or less.
Love it.
We value any feedback. Make sure and get in touch with us on Twitter. We are at CivicCast. We're also online, civiccast.us. You can listen to us on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. We'll see you next time.